Well, I think we're ready to kick off now, which is great. So, welcome everybody. I'm Christine Gerard, Director of Torch, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our Torch talk on AI and ability with Matilda, Feyiṣayọ, Ibini, and Dr. Kathryn Eccles from the Oxford Internet Institute. So just a bit of background about Torch Talks. We launched these earlier this year, and I think they've been a really interesting journey for us across interdisciplinary boundaries involving conversations between academics and practitioners beyond the university. In fact, this is the second one that we've done involving AI, both involving Kathryn, of course. The previous one was AI and creativity. This one is on AI and I think questions of ability and disability, a topical and sometimes controversial subject. So I'm delighted to introduce the speakers that we have today. Matilda is an award-winning playwright who writes for stage, TV, film, audio and books, with work centring on the experience of a range of different people, women, disabled people, queer people, the Black British experience through a magical realist lens. I hope that sounds about right. And I'd like to talk about her work. Her first play, Muscovada, in 2015, was set in early 19th century Barbados and centred on the slave trade. Little Miss Burden performed at the Bunker Theatre in 2019 on three Nigerian sisters, one of whom was a wheelchair user. The Unexpected Expert in 2020 on the impact of COVID lockdowns on care. Her 2020 script, Caring, along with Gabrielle Bissett-Smith, a horror comedy about a disabled woman who finds a good carer only to discover that the carer is a serial killer. And Sleepover 2023, a very great play, basically produced at the Bush Theatre, which won a Critics' Circle Award for Most Promising Playwright, nominated for the 24 Olivier Awards, for Outstanding Achievement in Affiliate Theatre. This year, I understand that Matilda was also awarded one of the 8 Wyndham Campbell Literature Prizes. Wow. And we at Torch are thrilled that Matilda was chosen to be an RSC Interdisciplinary Fellow for the academic year 2025-6 and is affiliated with Torch in Oxford. So this is brilliant for us. And I can introduce my colleague, Dr. Kathryn Eccles, who is a Senior Research Fellow at the Oxford Internet Institute, where she co-leads the Culture, Creativity and Technology Research Group. I think it's fair to say that your work explores, roughly speaking, the intersections of digital technology, culture and heritage. And you've investigated how tools such as XR and AI can enhance engagement with museum collections and cultural heritage. I first met Kathryn in 2017 when she had a project called Cabinet, which was brilliant for me. I mean, it was basically a interactive 3D and XR digital tools supporting virtual object handling. So I got involved in it because I was doing a project on, I won't go into this, but it was really good to get objects done in 3D, which you could put on the internet and get your students to rotate and turn around. It was an amazingly transformative thing. So I owe Kathryn a great deal, and we've had a lot to do with each other in recent years. She's also explored the role and impact of social media in crowdsourcing on public engagement with museum and heritage collections. Her most recent project, AI is Not Photography, is researching uses of AI in cultural production. And Kathryn's involved in 2 Torch projects, Uppsala's Culture and Creativity Cluster, which you'll be familiar with. Some of you actually are in our last book at lunchtime experience, and with Unica Berlin and Open Lab on AI and bias. So very well qualified and welcome you, everybody in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Christine. Thank you, Matilda, for being with us. We are, as you can imagine, after hearing that incredible bio, we are so beyond thrilled to have you with us over the next year, and I'm really excited to start with today, where we get to know you a little bit more and a little bit about the work that you have been doing and that you're going to be doing while you're with us. So I thought I would just start with a nice sort of warm-up question. I think when you hear all of those glittering awards and accomplishments over your career, it's always intriguing to know when was the moment that you knew that writing was it for you, that how you got interested in it in the first place, but what was the moment where you thought, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I think so. I started writing when I was a young kid, but like I wrote Scooby-Doo fan fiction. Is where it started. That I was never satisfied when the episode ended. I wanted more story, more plots, more characters, and then that kind of evolved into poetry. I thanked in my first ever play that I had published, I thanked my English teacher in secondary school, who really unlocked something in me, and also like the first person to kind of believe in my writing, because when I discovered poetry, that felt like a whole secret language that you could talk about really complex things, difficult things, without having to be so literal. And it was at a really interesting point in my life where, unfortunately, throughout secondary school, I was horrifically bullied, so I was becoming really withdrawn, really quiet, really not kind of almost like a shell of myself, and poetry was kind of a saving grace and being able to like, okay, even if I don't speak, there's another way I can express what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. So I miss Gallagher a lot. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm really sorry to hear you went through that.
Yeah.
It stays with you.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
absolutely. Like, so I was born with a condition called limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. It's a muscle weakening and wasting condition, and those symptoms started when I was 5. I wasn't diagnosed when I was 13. So for many years, people asked me. So I used to walk around with a very obvious limp. People would ask me, "What's wrong with you?" Which is a very inappropriate question, but why do you walk like that? And all my mum would tell me is, you tell people you have a medical condition that we didn't have the name of, and that journey is what inspired the play Little Miss Burden in 2019, to talk about what it's like to live with something that grows with you, that evolves with you, that it's, you know, in some ways in the play, I think I described it, that I'm sharing this body with this condition, and how do we form some kind of truce about the things I'm able to do and I'm not able to do, kind of thing. Yeah.
I love that description of a truth. That's really powerful. So you talked about the teacher that encouraged you and that sort of vehicle for thinking about creative writing at school. Was that where the first piece of your writing was performed?
No, so I was meant to study. So then it came to picking what you were going to study at uni, and I don't know about most people, but if you have like an immigrant parent, they want doctors, engineers, they want formal professions that pay well. And so I was actually meant to study psychology at uni, and behind my mum's back, I changed it to English literature and creative writing. And I didn't tell her till about like 3 months in.
Oh wow.
Because I was like, no, I can't change back, it's too late, I've already started the course, I've missed the term. Because it just sounded like so much more fun, and you get to explore all the different forms of writing. So it wasn't just what was the beginning of kind of poetry and prose, but we got to explore playwriting, screenwriting, writing for graphic novels, video game writing. It was like, it opened my mind to like, oh yeah, writing is more than just kind of the printed page, just text on a page kind of thing. And we did a module at uni in playwriting, and I was hooked from there. Like, how do I do more of this? This is the thing. This is the thing that like makes me feel good. This is the thing that gets me excited. But we only did one module on it, and my lecturer at the time encouraged us to go look at local theatres. Usually they have some kind of playwriting courses and things like that. And at the time, this was like over a decade ago now, so a lot of theatres were still subsidised by the government then. So they had to have outreach playwriting programmes. And so I happened to apply and got onto Soho Theatre's playwriting programme, and that really kick-started my journey of understanding plays. We'd meet once a month over 10 months, and by the end of that 10 months you would have the first draft of a full-length play. And as part of that process we had scenes read out by professional actors, and that also kind of was like, oh my god, you can get people to say things. You can get them to say anything. And that kind of really like cemented, okay, this is what I want to do, but I have no idea how you make money from it. And that was its own other process of learning how to get a play produced, how to the difference of a rehearsal draft to what you see on stage. All of that was a massive learning curve, but kind of cemented that, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to have to find a way to do it, even if I'm not being paid in the beginning.
Well, and that's really kind of conditioned into the process, isn't it? Unfortunately, with a lot of cultural work, that it's somehow vocational, and that drive will override the lack of funding, which is really
when I graduated, I was working at a charity whilst I was still playwriting, because I was like, I can't let this go. Like, hopefully one day it could be something that ends up paying the bills, but in the meantime, I do need to pay rent. I do need to live.
And so that learning that you talked about, all of the different aspects of play making, did all of that come to you through the Soho?
So that was one of the ways, so through Soho, which is still running today. It's a great course, playwriting program, and I did lots of others with much smaller theatres. Royal Court had one as well that I did. I did one with Talawa Theatre Company, so I kind of just did any that were free and that I was able to apply for. And it was through all those different programs I felt like I learned something different about not just the craft of playwriting and the process of production, but also thinking of yourself as someone who's in this as a career, that it's not just something I do on the side, it's something I want to make a living from. And the times were changing actually at that time, that the reality was that I was told in every single playwriting course, most of us this may not ever be a full-time thing, but doesn't necessarily mean it's something that you stop doing. It might be that you still have to have your Monday to Friday and you use your annual leave to be in rehearsals. Like, you've got to be, there was a real honesty about gone are the days where playwrights made their bread and butter purely from playwriting. And I think that's where also the interdisciplinary comes in, because it meant of thinking about what other ways can I utilize these skills that I've learned from this program. And one of the other pathways are TV, film, audio. So thinking of yourself more as a storyteller than just solely a playwright, because it will be incredibly difficult to make a career of it.
And was there a sort of breakthrough moment where something got picked up, or what was that moment?
I've been very, very fortunate to have quite a few. So I think having my first play, Moscovado one, was incredible. We applied to Arts Council funding so many times that we got rejected at different stages, but the Arts Council funded the R&D that we needed, and then it also funded the first production of it, as well as the tour that it went on. It went on a small-scale tour around the UK. And that was a huge experience and learning curve, and kind of was like, how do I do this again? And again, took 4 years till the next play. But in the meantime, I was still writing, still developing my craft, still trying to, I didn't have an agent at the time, and that didn't come till about 5 years later after that play. As well as whilst I was still working at the charity, I got a BAFTA scholarship to study playwriting and screenwriting at City University, and that opened a plethora of doors. It wasn't just paying for tuition, it covered getting mentors, access to like masterclasses, screenings, and they were incredibly, and still are, those scholarships are still running, but also a real game changer for me in terms of connections and networking and getting to meet people I probably not necessarily wouldn't otherwise have met, but might have taken a lot longer to meet, kind of thing. So those felt really pivotal in my career of like people taking me seriously, actually, and that I then had to take myself serious.
It's often mediated through the seriousness with which you're met, isn't it? The thing that strikes me about all of the things you just said is the amount of labour that is not playwriting that goes into your life. I mean, it's extraordinary.
And actually one of the things that I guess I've been really fortunate about almost falling into writing or like finding it as this kind of creative outlet for myself was I also needed to be, I remember having this conversation with my mum, needed to think about a career I could do that would work around my condition, especially because the prognosis was still, and in some ways still remains, a little unknown. All we know is that it's a debilitating condition. I'm losing mobility and the ability to move, essentially. So, as my mum used to say, I wasn't born for manual labour. But what else can I do instead? And she at the time thought, well, therapists, psychologists don't seem to have to move too much. Like, you can sit down and you tend to be a good listener. And I am a good listener for dialogue. But writing just so happened to also feel somewhat like something intuitive, but also something that allows the flexibility that I need as a disabled person, as someone that lives with a fluctuating chronic illness, that this profession is really adaptable for that. There's something quite welcoming about that not every day is the same, not every week is the same, not every year is the same.
Yeah, so that undulating pattern is sort of reinforced. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you've talked a little bit previously about how you use the sort of magical realism lens in your work, and you spoke really beautifully, I thought, about that sort of the imaginaries that could take flight while you're at school, the way in which writing could give you an alternative set of circumstances or way of being in your body or not in your body. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you use that lens?
I think it's become a bit of a muscle, actually. It's probably one of the only muscles I've been able to develop, which is that something about the endless possibilities of your current state not having to be the only state that you're in, or it's not a fixed state. They often, the example I think of often thinks of like people who are non-disabled or identify as non-disabled. That's a temporary state. There are constant possibilities about the way we live, the way we move, and one of the big things I think that writing helped me with was understand that the stories and narratives I'd been told about myself and people like myself could be rewritten. There were other possibilities. And there was something really important in that for me, that I was more than just what kind of like the doctors were saying, or the teachers that weren't Miss Gallagher were saying, that my story in some ways almost felt like my story hadn't been written yet. So it means it was up. There were, the chances were up for anything happening. And magical realism kind of, feels like a muscle, because I often had to do that in my everyday life, that if there was something I couldn't do, I'd have to find another way, and sometimes the other way may look a little bit strange or absurd, but it still got the end result was the same, right? And I think that became something, how my brain kind of operates. So I often tend not to operate too much in the literal. I think now, as I'm older, I think it's just easier because it's something I've had to do since I was young. And actually, I'd say that a lot about the disabled community is that we, a strength or a skill we have is being adaptable, is problem solving, and magical realism really encourages that, of not just taking what you see in front of you as the be all and end all, but actually exploring what am I missing, what am I not seeing. Those
sort of endless possibilities. So that brings us nicely onto AI, which is often described as a sort of hallucinatory technology, isn't it? So it can imagine all kinds of different things. So I know you're writing about AI and care at the moment. Tell us a little bit about what intrigues you about AI and its application.
So I think, I feel like it's the other way around. It came from a curiosity around care that then led me to AI.
Very interesting.
That I remember being told somewhere around, I must have been late teens, early 20s. And so at the time, my mum was my full-time carer, was supporting me every day to go to college or what have you, or to uni. And I remember having a meeting with the doctors who were like, your mum, who's still raising your two younger siblings, may not always have time to do the care that you'll need. have you thought about carers, or you know, that kind of thing. My mum kind of shut down that idea, but I also was like, oh, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with people I don't know trying to do my care, and the idea that like no one could do the care the way my mum does it, like and that kind of I was exploring, well, what were the conditions that would make the care comfortable for me at that time. And actually it was quite premature because I didn't need care at that time. It almost predated something that was going to happen 6 years later, kind of thing. So I was exploring that, and I also happened to be on a playwriting course at the time, and they were like, you know, you should be asking big questions. And I was like, okay, how would I be able to accept care? And that's where the idea of a robot came in. I think I could be potentially comfortable with a robot who did as I said, but also could kind of copy what my mum did. And that's where the original seed of the idea came from. And I tried to write it. And again, I think one of the big things that I've learned in this career is sometimes you get ideas to write stories, to write plays, what have you, but you haven't lived the years you need to write it. You haven't had the experiences yet you need to tell that story, and this is a clear example of that. And so held on to this idea, but didn't really write it. And it wasn't until about 2018, by this time I'd been already 5 years working with PAs, with carers in my life, now moved out of the family home, and an opportunity came to like write something, and this just kind of found its natural way back into my brain again, being like, hey, I'm still here, you haven't written me yet. And that's kind of the journey that's brought us to here, where I've been kind of on and off, just kind of doing a bit of research, writing a little bit around, kind of care, and also kind of navigating, as someone who's had to navigate the adult social care system in this country and how fractured it is and underfunded it is, has really opened up what was initially just an idea of like fear of strangers to now kind of like, actually there's a lot of, it feels pertinent to what's happening in the world at the moment, and there's a lot of people with solutions that aren't being listened to. And I feel like some of the reasons that is the case is because the people with the solution are disabled. They're not being listened to, they're not in decision-making power, we don't have resources or the same resources as the state does. And so it's felt like the hope as I'm writing this play is that it could hopefully spark a conversation about how the people who require the care are the best people to know how to kind of solve the kind of systemic issues we've been having with when it comes to adult social care, and that the adult social care covers beyond just kind of elderly care, because I think that's on the national consciousness, that often adult social care, the picture of it is, oh, it's at the end of life, as opposed to as someone who's needed adult social care since I was in my early 20s, you can require care at any point in your life. It's not relegated to just the end, as it were. So kind of teaming that up with AI, and then the proliferation of AI in the last kind of 5-6 years has kind of been very surprising, and I couldn't have imagined that we'd ever be at this point when it comes to kind of its possibilities, its interactions and intersections with healthcare, especially everything from apps to help carers log the daily activities of clients that they're working with, to AI being able to detect early signs of cancer in people's skin before any symptoms have even become present. That feels like science fiction.
And it just keeps unfolding, doesn't it?
But I think I have a curiosity of how can AI help us to be more human, actually. That it feels like a neutral tool that is often wielded by specific groups with very clear agendas. And I'm kind of like, I feel there's potential for a holistic approach to AI and how it can actually help us to be better, to liberate one another and to be better at looking after one another.
I remember you used that phrase the very first time we met, that AI could help us to be more human, and it has stuck with me, and it's lived in my brain in such a wonderful way. I think it's a really powerful way of thinking about this technology. And so in my sort of academic context, in the Internet Institute, we're often thinking about harms and biases in AI. Is AI doing the right kind of work? Why are we outsourcing certain kinds of jobs to it and not others? And often we think about, I think, in our kind of conversations about whether AI is doing the right sort of work. But it had never occurred to me until we met that it's a sort of hunger could be really appropriately tooled to the kinds of settings that you were talking about, because it's so solicitous, and I think the care system is often pared to the bone, isn't it? Yes. So it's around sort of offering you the minimum possible that you absolutely need, and every interaction with AI, if you've played with it, is about giving you more and more and more, and we're not done yet. I can help you with this and that. And so I wondered if you could say a little bit more about the ways in which it's AI's sort of natural affordances are fitting into your thinking.
Yeah, so I've been trying to write this play since 2018, and it's tentatively titled Aiden, and it's supposed to kind of explore AI in adult social care in the future. We know that Japan is on course to be the world's first country to launch an automated system of carer robots, and I think that's anywhere between 2030 and 2050. And when they do that, it will set a new precedent for the way we look at care the world over, right? And so my play is to kind of speculatively imagine what would that look like in the UK when that new precedent is set. And I think I can make some guesstimations based on what our governments have historically done when it comes to adult social care and their approaches, and how they're quite limited imaginations of what care is, what it looks like, how it's administrated, will prove even more problematic when you throw AI into the situation. And so some of the things I've been exploring include, so for example, AI, at one point, and I saw this in an article and then the article disappeared, so it's made me really paranoid, but at one point our government was using AI, testing AI on welfare benefit criteria. So the idea that someone could apply for benefits and the AI would go through your personal details and decide whether or not you are eligible for those said benefits. However, what they didn't bank on was that AI was a little too good, where it was finding most people eligible for benefits in the way that human beings can deny our realities. And it opens up a kind of ethical question about, could the government commission a tech company to make software that was intentionally biased or intentionally discriminatory about maybe a family of people who historically have claimed benefits, or maybe a place where there is high benefit claimants in that area based on people's address. So they scrapped it, and I've not heard a thing since online about it, because that does open up a huge ethical thing about when people apply for benefits in our country, they are often denied because a human is denying them. But to get AI to do that, you have to program it, and that opens some legal problems if you intentionally. What does it mean to intentionally create an algorithm that is biased? That usually the thing that happens is you create it, you discover a bias, and you're trying to rewrite it. But what if the bias is encoded intentionally? Who is then liable? So those are some of the ethical things I've been trying to explore in the play, in terms of, so for example, living with any condition, all disabilities and conditions fluctuate, depending on health, depending on weather, age, your lifestyle, etc. And our governments historically have never been able to understand that you can have a good day, a bad month, a bad year when it comes to your health. And so in the play, I'm looking at one of the things that AI will be able to do, or a robotic carer will be able to do, is record an enormous amount of real-time data about people's conditions. And that some of that data may be useful for people studying or researching into rare conditions like mine, for example, where at the moment I will never see a cure or treatment in my lifetime. They're still trying to bring down the time it takes to diagnose someone, because that's 8 years is too long. So one of the things that I was exploring in the play was if this robot is able to collate an enormous amount of data about the person it's caring for, who then has access to that data? We know the tech company will have access to that data. Will that data then be disseminated to the local council who is funding this care or funding this pilot scheme? And however, if they see that the client or the user has had stable health for a few months, will they then lower her benefits to try and encourage her to get back into work? But getting back into work as a disabled person is not as easy as that sounds. It is not disabled people not wanting to work, it's non-disabled people not wanting to hire disabled people. A robot cannot fix that, which is essentially ableism, right? And one of the things I'm really kind of excited by, but also like stressed by when trying to explore this story is through the teachings of this character and her interactions with her robot, is she able to help it understand its place within a system? That yes, you're here to support me, but you're also surveilling me, and that the data that you collect about me and is then disseminated to these different agencies is then harming me. And so one of the things I was really excited about exploring, that I'm less interested in kind of like the kind of sci-fi tropes you see of robot develops consciousness and starts questioning, am I human? Am I God? Who is God? And more interested in, can you help it understand its place within a wider network of systems, right? And if it truly wants to live up to its purpose, which is to support and care, will it go against some of its algorithmic software, because it knows in order to really care for someone is to not harm them intentionally or unintentionally. So one of the things was like, could it send duplicate data in order to try and prevent her benefits from being lowered, kind of thing. So that's kind of the things I've been exploring around social care and tech, that I'm very aware of, or feel very aware of, that tech isn't gonna remove ableism, it's only gonna help amplify it. And then that's a really interesting tool that AI could play, in that a lot of these kind of maybe subtle, or maybe not necessarily always subtle, but often coded dog whistle bias. Could AI be this kind of ableism? What are those things called when you use them on the beach to scan the sand? Metal detector. Could AI become this kind of ableism detector and make things more pronounced, make things more obvious, so that way in some ways it can help us check our biases.
Yes.
In that way. So yeah, it's a big old play. With a lot of big questions I'm asking, and I'm up for the challenge, because as someone who's for the last more than a decade of my life now navigating adult social care, it is an incredibly dehumanizing system. It's incredibly ableist. It's incredibly traumatic, and I would love to be able to imagine that won't get worse with AI. I would love to be able to posit a future where it's not perfect, but here's a possibility.
Yeah.
If we change some of the things we're doing now, here's a different outcome that we could have. I would love to see, so one of the things I would love to see, one of the big things for people who do care long term, so carers, PAs, support workers, they often develop back problems, joints, hip issues, knee issues. And actually in a future where potential robotic carers are possible, could they assist the workers?
Yeah.
So not just the disabled person, but actually assist in the sense of take some of that, so some of those repetitive tasks. If it could take some of those responsibilities away from the worker, does that mean people could work a little bit longer, or their role in that profession could evolve so that they aren't leaving it with worse mobility than they started out with? So yeah, I'm kind of, it's a multi-pronged exploration of how AI could potentially benefit us if it wasn't in this kind of capitalistic, imperialist, white supremacist, current version of our world.
Yeah. I think, you've painted such a vivid picture of it as a sort of transactional technology in many of its applications, but the sort of imagined role in the play is that it finds itself actually connected to a really complex network of interactions and frameworks of care, concepts of care that sometimes would be telling the truth and sometimes might be not disclosing certain things or shielding people from harm in different ways.
And especially because we live in a country where we have things like the Care Act that is toothless. It's across the country. There are some local authorities that work towards it and use it, and others who pretend it does not exist. So people's experiences of care are so varied across the country. And when you have policy and legislation like that, that's not even, and that is consequenceless. So when people do breach it or ignore it, there are no consequences. Throwing AI into the mix, you're gonna get some problems.
Yeah. We can all agree on that. I have so many more questions, but I'm also aware that you might have some questions, so I wanted to make sure that we had time to take yours. So if people have questions, loads of questions. Okay, I'm going to start over here and then I'm going to come to you guys.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Kathryn. I have worked with digital accessibility for over 25 years. And it's amazing, one aspect that is really amazing is the ability of innovating. And a lot of technologies that we are all using now, it came from the disability community.
You're absolutely right.
Alexa, for instance, the smart homes, and so on. So, and even our mobile is an assistive tech. Very discrete assistive tech that actually brings everyone together rather than isolating people with bulky material. One concern that I have with AI, and I agree with you, there are amazing possibilities for independence. But my concern is actually the fact that the tech companies, and that from my experience with working with tech companies, they, I'm very suspicious that they tend to use accessibility as a Trojan horse to collect data, to collect information and privacy. And I understand that a number of disabled people in the communities, they are happy to trade that privacy for the benefits. How do you feel in regards to that aspect, and how do you feel about regulation?
Such a great question. I'm 100% for regulation because a lot of these tech companies are funded by some weird billionaires with some of the weirdest perspectives on people, on population. And I'm using weird because I prefer to use swear words. I'm absolutely for regulation. And one thing you've hit on, which is really interesting, is that as a disabled person, the cost of any service that I need, especially the vital ones, is often privacy. That the cost is that if I need support with, whether that's benefits, whether that's care, what have you, the cost of any vital service for a disabled person is often I have to be an open book. That if I want an assessment for something, I have to give permission for them to access my medical records. And I'll be candid here. A couple of years ago, I had to appeal a decision that was made because I gave the assessor access to my medical records, and she intentionally ignored it. And it took almost 2 years, about 18-month appeal, which was incredibly stressful. And we got to the independent review panel, and she wasn't there. She didn't show up because I knew she wouldn't. Her boss showed up, who wasn't familiar with the case. And they asked him why, if all the information you needed was in Matilda's medical records, was that not included? And he was just stuttering. Just like, because, you need to understand that. And it was like, we've wasted 18 months of my life. We've wasted 18 months of resources, and also 18 months of my mental health. And I was like, sometimes it doesn't feel worth it. Sometimes the cost doesn't feel worth it. I'd rather not have people rooting through my medical records, rooting through my wounds, my traumas, as proof or evidence that I am human enough or disabled enough. So to your question, we absolutely need regulation. And even the regulation that the UK government has suggested is a drop in the ocean, nothing to the kind of regulation the real stringent regulation we would need, the one that does inform people about this is the data that will be shared about you. Are you okay with that? And not in the kind of terms and conditions that's a 40-page document, size 11 font, where it's thousands upon thousands of pages, actually accessible, understandable consent forms around sharing your data, and with who as well. That only specific people with specific access should be able to access your data, your history, because it does shape people's view of you. That's why data can be in the wrong hands, can be so dangerous. It can, if people have access to specific parts of your history, of your data, that affects what you are given.
And it's re-traumatizing to have to see that vulnerability exposed again and again and again.
100%. So I'm all in favour for regulation, and very, very stringent regulation, because those tech companies have not done anything to prove they can be trusted.
Thank you.
We had 2 questions here, didn't we?
I wanted to know, it's really heartfelt what you're sharing with us today, because I'm disabled as well. And it is a difficult journey, because when people see you as high functioning and everything, it's hard for them to understand you've got cognitive difficulties. So I really felt when you were talking, because I'm new in this world, and how I have to ask people that I'm disabled to just give me some extra considerations. I might get it wrong. I might be okay, I might get it wrong. And so you've been through the PIP assessment.
Yes, I have, and when it changed.
And it's true, it is really stressful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very stressful.
And it's that's also intentionally so. There was a term that I learned recently about why trying to complain is always difficult, or why these assessments are so invasive. I can't remember the term for the life of me, but it was a new term, and I was like, because this is not by accident. It is absolutely by design. It is to put people off applying. It's to stress you out to the point where you don't feel that you deserve it as well. It makes you self-doubt yourself. All of that is intentional.
Just a little, because you said you have days like this, on days you're highly functioning, and you're using your brain, and it's not obvious you have disability. And then some days you really go and you're not sure why, but that makes it difficult to work and do other things, because you don't know when that's going to happen. But the question I was going to ask is, are you using AI nowadays in your care in any way?
It's a good question. I'm not at the moment. I've actually, to tell that, I feel like the only software I kind of use is dictation software. So I've found a lot of help with Otter AI. So days where I'm really fatigued and I want to write a to-do list so that I know what I'm going to do when I'm not fatigued. I found Otter AI really helpful. I've also lost quite a bit of dexterity in my hands. So typing is a lot harder. But Otter AI is probably the best. Not that I'm trying to sell them to you. For me, I found them the best software so far in accuracy and being able to understand me and being able to write and still meet deadlines, even if it takes me a little bit longer because I've got to then format it and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably the only one I'm using at the moment. Yeah. And I've been experimenting with ChatGPT, but I'm also very conscious of its climate footprint. So I try and use it as little as possible. What it did help me with was find funding opportunities to apply for writing residencies that I could apply for, kind of thing. So kind of a search tool has been useful in that regard. But yeah, I do try and limit my use because I'm like, God, how many trees? How much water? I was like, let me use Google. Let me use something that not any better, but yeah, not sucking up resource. Yeah.
I like the way I was trying to understand about you saying AI is making you more human, because we're all thinking it's taking who we are away. You've gone completely the other side. But now I understand that people like myself and you, by using ChatGPT, it gives me a bit of a voice where I can check things out and I don't look as silly, or I'm more up to date with things, or I give it to find out information, like where can I go with cognitive disability to play a game or something. And so that's why I understand why it's helping us.
It does
get
have
that information.
It does have a lot of potential. It's just at the moment it's in the very wrong hands of people who only want profit and extraction, and they'll do anything to get that. Yeah.
I was interested by the description of what you might call the unwritten bias of the current humans that are handing out the yay or nay on various assessments, and also on your comments about regulation, because it feels that if at the moment we have unwritten bias, if we move to a model of using AI, you're having to be a bit more honest because you're having to code in those biases, and then I presume there's going to be an element of transparency. So if the data is centralised and everyone has access to it and it's more transparent and the biases are clearly written down, it feels like a fairer, better approach. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a fairer approach? And then my question is like, what is fair though? Because I feel like in some ways, to speak to your point about AI removing the human, I think there'll be aspects that we know AI is safe to probably do or collect or collate, but maybe actually we still do need humans for human processing, human sorting, that kind of thing, and AI can be a kind of like double checker of something rather than relying on it entirely. I think that's where my limit is. I think that actually there still needs to be a lot of engagement as humans actually between one another.
It's interesting you say that, because you also made the comment about ableism.
Yeah.
So why are you trusting the humans more than the AI?
Because one, we've seen time and time again so many engineers or people that create like apps or whatever AI, they unknowingly code their bias into AI. AI will never be like a flawless, perfect thing that can't be biased. Like the one that goes viral literally every year is the video of the person that puts their hand under the soap dispenser and no soap comes out. And they keep putting their hand and no soap comes out until they put a white piece of tissue paper and soap dispenses, because the AI used in that soap dispenser has not been trained to pick up melanin in skin, that his hand was too dark. And so one of the things I think of is that in order for AI to rid some of its bias is to introduce it to as wide a data set as possible, meaning getting as many different perspectives, people, body shapes, whatever it's being used for. You want as many different people to interact with it as possible if you're going to rid it of some kind of particular bias, right? But I'm definitely conscious of it not becoming something that is what's the word? something that is used as a way of justifying to remove the human out of it. Well, AI does it quicker, or well, AI is, it doesn't take as much time or whatever. I feel like I don't have like a concrete answer, but I feel like there is a middle ground where we can meet AI halfway. It doesn't have to do everything, but it can be useful in particular contexts.
If I could just come back with a bit of context. So I run a small business in the city, a software business, and we've been busy implementing AI over the last year and a half to remove staff to reduce staff costs. So in my experience, this level of AI is very rules-based. So you wouldn't have issues such as the black hand under the soap dispenser, because the rules are very clearly laid out, and therefore any bias would be much more transparent and much more open, because it will be one of the rules. So that's my context.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like then it calls the question, who sets the rules? Because if it is just an individual, you will still have a lot of problems. But I feel like in some ways it's one of the things I'm also grappling in the play is people's desire to, and not desire, but kind of people's aim to kind of like reduce maybe the human labor, right? In terms of actually human labor could go to something more, quote unquote, worthwhile, or more something that requires humans rather than AI, right? And that's also, I feel like, an ethical question around, well, for example, when, for example, like Japan launches its automated care robots, and they're still far off from the science fiction version of a care robot being able to do everything. They're many centuries away from that. But let's posit that as a kind of reality. Where do all the human care workers go? What do they do? What are they retrained as? Where are they deployed? And what if people do want to still get into care, even though there are care robots? So those are kind of those are the kind of knottiness that I'm wrestling with and exploring. But I am personally kind of here for not entirely replacing all humans, that actually there is a significant importance of having human beings around other human beings, that you're not just surrounded by screens or things without souls.
It's a conversation we often have around creative work as well. That AI has sort of come for creative work much earlier than we expected, and it doesn't seem to be doing a lot of the labour-saving work that we want, that humans would choose not to do. So why is there this fixation on doing the work that is historically not very well paid, but that's seen as the summit of sort of innate human contribution? Why is it that we want to outsource that work? And because it's so clearly meaningful to people, otherwise they wouldn't battle through all of the systems and structures that you described to us early on in your career in order to be able to reach your potential. And
I think that's a big question that I'm exploring, is what is care? Because what is care is different to everyone. What care looks like, what is good care, what is bad care. That question, I don't think could ever be centralized. There'll be so many interpretations of how one desires being cared for.
Care is so often sort of a motif for the kind, keeping people in places. Motherhood is a form of care. You spoke about how instrumental your mum had been in your early care, and I think motherhood is a form of care that's often invisible and devalued, and society hasn't quite come to terms with how to grapple with a mother who has caring responsibilities and also has working responsibilities outside the home. And so I do think there's a complication in how we think about care. We haven't quite got it straight in terms of how we value and devalue it in different contexts.
Absolutely. And how care shows up in all of our lives in different ways. Some people don't acknowledge how care shows up in their life. They're like, I've never received care, no one's ever helped me. And you're like, that's not entirely true. You didn't drive the bus that got you here. That's a form of care,
Matilda, do you think of cultural care because it varies around the world.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
how culturally we deal with people who are disabled and
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
That's
So,
quite
yeah.
important. Hope you
Yeah.
include that because that will widen the audience as well.
Yeah. One of the ways I'm looking at is I'm of Nigerian heritage, and unfortunately in Nigeria we don't have care infrastructure. However, we are far more communal than the UK when it comes to sharing resources, checking in on people. We don't have care homes for elderly people, but actually they stay in their own homes, and everyone in the community pitches in. If you live on that road, everyone knows when, oh, have you seen Uncle so and so? Is he okay? Let's go check on him. That kind of thing. There's a different way care shows up, even if you don't have like a formalized infrastructure or funding. And that's also been born out of a result of a government that doesn't have secure health infrastructure. So yeah, I have been kind of exploring the different ways like care shows up in worlds where that it doesn't look like this.
And people's expectations as well,
Yeah,
because that's quite an important part of it. People expecting they deserve this or this and that, and then how you manage the whole thing.
Any other questions? Yeah, at the back.
I was going to say, you've spoken of your personal experience, but also we hear many stories of people having to really battle to advocate for what you are entitled to, let alone what you need. Is there any role that AI can potentially play in a positive way to help some of those battles that you might face, or other disabled people with particular needs might face?
That's a really good question. That I'm not too clued up on yet at the moment, because I feel like there's so many problems within the care sector that are, whether it's from staffing and retention to even the way care is administrated in terms of what is quote unquote your basic need and people's understanding of what a basic need is. And I think, I haven't yet seen how people have utilized AI in that way, other than in terms of ways of trying to, I guess, lessen the admin, as it were. I think I've seen it more in administrative ways, but not yet quite practical, hands-on ways.
Just depersonalise. You talked a lot about that sort of vulnerability of showing too much of yourself and feeling judged in certain sort of interactions where you have to put information out there. I wonder if AI could save you some of the cost associated with some of those tasks.
I wonder, especially because I know there's still a long way to go, but a lot of our records are not yet digitized as well. So that will take a long time to be able to kind of collate accurately and make sure it hasn't misunderstood something as well.
That comes sort of back to the data model question that we had earlier. You wanted to ask a question?
Well, yes, I have a silly niggling thing that goes right back to the beginning. When you were talking about your own path to being a playwright, your very first break, you said you got a grant for something, it was like BND or something. Well, the very first thing you said, and I didn't know what it was. It was... No, before BAFTA. Before you mentioned the BAFTA, I know what BAFTA is. It was you used three initials.
I'd never come across it.
Was it Arts Council?
No, I know the arts. There was something. Your very first lucky break before the BAFTA, when you got some funding from something.
I don't remember the acronym.
R&D?
Might be R&D.
So R&D is research and development. So the Arts Council funded our R&D, the research and development period. So we applied to Arts Council to pay for like 2 weeks, to pay myself, the director, and a bunch of actors to be in a room together to dissect the play, try and make it.
I don't know where it would be from. I'm sorry.
R&D.
R&D.
Yeah.
And it was right at the beginning. And
cool. No worries.
And I sort of, it's one of those things where, especially sitting in the front when I can't see everybody behind me, it's almost as if you're in a conversation, and you think, and I have to stop myself from saying, what does that mean? As you would do if you were just in a three-way conversation.
It does feel like a
Yes, you know, and so it was still niggling at my brain.
I'm glad you're right.
Development.
Clear that one up.
I do find that people in general use acronyms an awful lot in a situation where, without it seems,
Yep.
I mean, in general, people use acronyms without necessarily thinking about their audience if they're going to have any idea of what the acronym is.
That's true.
Yes.
I'm really sorry. I don't want to cut off questions, but I think we are due to finish. Is that right, Sarah? Yeah. So I think we'll be at the front. So if you want to come and chat, please do. But for now, let me thank Matilda so much. Wonderful.